Welcome back to the Vienna Vibe. I am Drew. Thank you for joining us. And today with me, we have got Morgan Leach. What's
Hello.
up? Hello, Morgan. You want to give a quick introduction for anyone watching who may not be familiar with you? I don't know who that would be, but
Yeah, Morgan Leach standing in today, maybe for Jim Leach,
Possibly.
who is on vacation in Florida.
I know. Yeah. While we're freezing here in West Virginia, we don't even have a space heater in here yet, so we're a little
No, it's a little
frosty,
it's a little chilly in here,
a little frigid, but
it's okay.
Yeah,
we got
we'll
our,
make do.
our hot coffee. Thanks for bringing that for me this morning.
No problem. I've got my iced coffee because I make bad decisions, but it's all right. Yeah, we'll be okay. So yeah, today I brought Morgan in. Morgan, if you're not familiar, I mean, he's started and ran several different small businesses. We may talk a little bit about some of your ventures. Now is a family law and personal injury attorney, has his own practice opening up in Vienna, but we'll talk about that a little. The main thing we're going to talk about today that both Morgan and I have been kind of pretty interested in, I don't think I'd consider either of us huge authority or professional on it, but artificial intelligence, and particularly how we have played around with trying to integrate that into our workflow at small businesses. So kind of how artificial intelligence can be helpful to a small business and sort of just our observations of where it is, where we think it may go, some of the concerns with it, some of the opportunities that it presents, that kind of thing. Just kind of, it's something that we talk about a lot outside of this context, and we think it's a pretty interesting conversation to have. So that's kind of where we're going to go. Morgan, I kind of alluded to this a little bit. You want to just give a real quick, brief overview of sort of your background and what you're doing now?
Yeah, so I, as you said, I have been involved in various different businesses. Probably most notably, when I got out of law school, I was in their Center for Energy and Sustainable Development, which is a pretty novel program. At the time that I was there were only 2 programs like that in the country. And so we really started to focus on, West Virginia's economy and diversification and natural resource development outside of our traditional, commodities like coal and timber. So we started to look at the industrial hemp program, which just kind of, serendipitously became, a new crop that we could grow.
Right.
So the status of the law changed. We had the 2014 Farm Bill. We just kind of, dove right into that industry and started a statewide farming co-op and and an advocacy lobbying group and really just dove in, right? And that lasted for several years. I mean, we were in that business for probably 4 or 5 years until a regulatory environment and market forces really just we just got beat out of business.
Right.
I mean, it just got hyper competitive and we were just not big and strong enough to compete. But that was still a really good experience for us. We really made an effort at trying to build a new industry for West Virginia. Honestly, as I sit here today, I couldn't tell you the status of that other than that there are CBD products all over the shelves of gas stations and different types of convenience stores and health food stores. Probably most of which are imported. They're probably not as many domestic producers, especially not in West Virginia, as you would probably think. But that was kind of my, I guess, former career. Now I'm pretty squarely just rooted in the legal industry and working to build a new law firm here in Vienna, in which we are exclusively focusing on family law. Just recently hired a new partner. Her name is Ellen Smith. She was formerly the family court judge here in Wood County. When she left the bench, she came to work for us, so we were really excited about that. And now just really focusing, our practice on helping people, helping families. Really our mantra is just to help people resolve their problems. I mean, you would be surprised how many people in today's society with the nuclear family run into all sorts of different family law issues. And it's not just divorce. It's, child custody, it's grandparent visitation and rights. It's, there's just a whole plethora of issues that people, find themselves in these disputes and debates with other people of their family, and we really pride ourselves on helping them work that stuff out and find a path forward to kind of help, just make whatever bad problem into a better situation.
Right.
So that's something we really enjoy, and we really like being able to provide that service to the community. And I think our clients, tying this back to the conversation about AI, are really seeing the benefit of lawyers stepping out into this space and using AI in a way that really, I would say that the biggest thing that we try to do is improve efficiency for the types of legal services that we provide. And that comes from, basically research is a huge part of it. I mean, AI assisted research is probably, I would say, conservatively has saved us hundreds, if not thousands of hours of research over the past couple years of doing this. So that's a big topic we can talk about.
Right. And I think that's a good transition. So how long have you been fully immersed in the legal world? Like, how long has that been your full-time career?
So worked for Jim's office when I got out of law school. That was in 2016. I was in there for probably about a year part-time. I was actually part-time running the hemp farmers co-op during that time. So, December 2018, I left his office, hung a shingle, as they say, started my own law firm out of my living room. And so that's what I've been doing since then, and kind of, growing and building, and been in several different offices, and now kind of finally landed here in Vienna. We're at the new office, 3006 Grand Central Avenue. So now, again, since probably 2019, 2020 is when we really got, fully out of the hemp business and was, fully committed to the practice of law. And so,
right. And that kind of coalesces with the time frame that all these different AI technologies started really becoming a thing. I guess we should spend just a second, and for anyone not super familiar, talk about what we're talking about when we say artificial intelligence. So most of the different tools that are out there right now that are useful, the ones that we're going to be talking about, the ones that everyone is pushing, they're what's called generative AI, mostly large language models, I think is what LLMs. Yeah, I think that's what that stands for. But it's things like ChatGPT, Google Gemini, Microsoft Copilot, all those things. It's these programs that kind of take an input from you in the form of text, and then they are sort of a little bit of a black box, but they've been trained on just all this information from wherever across the internet, just a huge, vast array of information, and they try to parse your input into what it thinks is the most accurate output for what you're looking for. That's kind of a very, very simplified version of it, but it's basically just kind of like guessing on the fly of like what word should come next from word to word based on what you've put in, which really undersells kind of how impressive a lot of the technology is, but ultimately that's kind of how it works. And it's one of those things that started rolling out into the public probably 3 years ago or so, somewhere around there. So not too long after you were just getting started full time. And it's one of those things that has been kind of looming, and now over the past year, it's sort of arrived in full force. So like Apple, the new iPhone, is natively integrated with their AI system. There's just a huge a plethora of these different AI tools that are built on the backs of these more fundamental systems. Like ChatGPT is the main one that a lot of things are built on, but then people use that as a basis to go build these more niche and specific, like small tailored systems, focused at different industries and that kind of thing. And so we've played around with some of that. So I don't know how much I've really talked about it on here, but in my day job, whose responsibilities I'm shirking right now to just kind of hang out and talk about this,
True.
Yeah, I work at Jim Leach's office, and among other things, like I do all our marketing, media production, that kind of stuff. But I also am our systems administrator. And so I kind of manage all of our technology integrations, our different systems and everything.
Which there are a lot of in a law firm.
There are a lot. Yeah. And so we have not, I've been aware of what's been going on with the AI revolution, I guess. I think that's probably a bit strong of a word, but I've been aware
I don't
of.
know. I'd say that's probably about what it is.
Yeah. But I've been trying to kind of stay attuned to what's been going on that front as it's been rolling out and kind of exploring possibilities for how we could use that to kind of make our systems flow a little bit better. And I've got thoughts on that. I mean, we've had mixed success. I may be a little less bullish on it than I think you probably are in some ways, that I think can be interesting to talk about. But that's just kind of where I'm coming from in my background on it. And so, yeah, it's been interesting to see how the landscape has changed, both just at large, with the world at large, with these AI systems, and also in the practice of law, and seeing how it's able to aid what it is that we do. Because it is pretty powerful and does a lot of interesting things. Yeah. So I'd say you started out right before all this happened, and then you've been kind of seeing it grow. And my impression is that you've been kind of keeping a pretty close eye on that and trying to keep current with how that's able to kind of help improve the services that you offer. I mean, that's ultimately what it is. Yeah. So I guess just in a very, very broad sense, and then we can get into the specifics a little more. Sure. What has been your experience with seeing how AI has kind of transformed the legal field and your ability to do what you do?
Well, I mean, generally, there's a few different categories that we use AI because, especially in the legal field, we have of course, the rules of professional conduct. We have a lot of ethical considerations with using AI. I'll give at some point during this talk some bad examples of where lawyers have gotten themselves in trouble using AI. But it's not only what traditionally think lawyers do, which is read books, read cases, analyze statutes, and apply those to your specific case or situation. But also there's other things that we do. Lawyers manage huge amounts of data, right? We have so much information that we have, for example, in any sort of case, you've got discovery, which is all this information for your side of the case, for the other side of the case, depending on what practice area you're in, that can be more and less voluminous. However, for example, to have AI help you interpret and analyze some of this data is helpful. But then we also really have to balance that with, protecting people's privacy. Right. And so that is like kind of one of the areas that we are still trying to figure out how to manage that balance, because frankly, the legal career, profession really has not figured this out yet. So it can be a bit of the Wild West in terms of how you use this. Like I said, there are good ways to use it. There are bad ways to use it. And then there are ways that you should not use it at all.
Right.
And so being able to understand what those are, you really have to take a lot of time to understand and research and learn and know what the limitations are, just as well as the opportunity. So the biggest opportunity that we first saw, and this is an area where it just has so much utility for lawyers because it takes just so much time to research cases. I first started with a product called Case Text, and they were actually one of the first ones to hit the market with an AI assisted research tool. It was initially called CoCounsel, and so that tool you could get in, and basically it looked like your normal kind of legal research database research tool, but what it did was just put basically a Google search bar on the front of it to where you could query and ask different types of legal questions. And then it would pull up not only all the authorities in terms of statute, in terms of case law, but it would also synthesize that for you and provide a basic response to your question.
Right.
Which for us was not the answer, right? What it became was the starting point for what our analysis was. So we just really got a head start in terms of, for example, for me to go in and read 15 to 20 cases to get to this, basic response would take me possibly an entire workday, of research. Whereas if I use this tool now, AI working at lightning speed has now at least surveyed these 20 cases and then has laid out the different authorities in its response and even cites to them. So it gives you a really good roadmap of, okay, these are the issues. This is the starting point. These are the authorities I need to look at. And that saved me, again, instead of 8 hours, it takes about 8 seconds.
Right. And so just for like a practical example of what you're talking about, how this works. So my understanding, and I'm not a lawyer, I don't do that kind of legal research, but you put in a set of facts that you're working from, and then it'll go automatically, use its artificial intelligence to kind of analyze the issues at hand there and pull out any relevant cases it's able to find and point you to the relevant rulings and judgments in that case, right? As opposed to the old way you'd have to do it, which is just manually searching. And I mean, you've used a search engine. I mean, you know how that works.
After case after case,
exactly.
Right? It's just bringing up things, Boolean search, keywords, whatever.
Yes.
Whereas AI is much more expansive, taking a much deeper dive than what any search tool could do for you before.
Right. Yes. And you mentioned that it's not the answer, but it gives you a good starting point. And that's been my experience as well, is that I have used ChatGPT just personally and troubleshooting type of things for quite a while now. It's very good for that type of thing. As far as actual work product, like writing, drafting something, creating something, it's pretty, I don't want to say it's limited, but it's pretty rote in that aspect. But it is fantastic for just pointing you in the right direction, getting something on the page, giving you a starting point, or maybe giving you a different perspective, a new way of looking at this thing that maybe you hadn't before. And there's a pretty transformative
brainstorming aspect to it. I mean, outside of just purely legal analysis, also just looking at, okay, you're trying to figure out a problem, you're trying to brainstorm ideas, you start to prompt AI, in a chat window and say, this is what I'm working on. Help me think of new ideas or new ways to look at this, or give me a summary of a bunch of information that you're trying to make sense of, and it can do that very quickly. And I find that the more targeted of a question that you give it, the better of a response that you get from it. So that's been also helpful for us in kind of many different aspects. For example, when we get to trial time, and we're getting into kind of the narratives, opening statements, doing witness outlines, things of that nature. Hey, here's all the things that I need to know from this person, or information I need to elicit from them. Arrange this in a way for me that helps me, take an outline that may take me an hour to do. Now I'm giving it a prompt, and I have a very good workable outline, again, within 10 seconds.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, you're not likely to just walk into trial using only that outline, but you can massage that into something that is actually genuinely good and usable, and a fraction of the time that it would have taken you to start that from scratch.
Right.
And that kind of brings me back. You talk about putting all this information in and having it generate something based on all the facts and everything, to what you were talking about with the ethics and the privacy concerns. And I'll just throw out here as a disclaimer, there is a whole other side of ethical considerations to all this generative AI, just based on the fact that it's trained on data from other people. And there's just this massive debate over its usage of that information and the permission to be able to be trained on it and all that thing. And that's not even getting into AI art. That's not necessarily what we're wanting to talk about today, but that is a concern that is out there, and I'm pretty aware of. But as far as just our industry, the ethical concerns, like you said, with client data, and like at my job, we deal with personal injury, so we're dealing with medical records, which is all
HIPAA protected.
Exactly, a whole other area, and that is, it's such a moving target. So you are using, you said co-counsel, case text, whatever, or I don't know if you're still using it.
No, that was the first product that I used that kind of got me exposed to that. That company actually got bought by Thomson Reuters, and then we kind of migrated. We're kind of determining between Westlaw or Lexis. Those are the two major products out there. we ended up going with Lexis because it actually had a stronger AI research and drafting tool. And so we used that in addition to Google Workspace is what I manage my, all of my, data retention
I
and
use
storage.
that for all my side businesses as well. Yeah.
Right. And then their product actually kind of later to the market, but I think, has some better utility, which is Gemini is their AI tool, which can assist you in lots of different things. It can assist you in drafting in a Google Doc or help you draft an email or help you search for things in your system, et cetera. But yeah, I mean, just kind of briefly on those, ethical considerations. I mean, at this point, we don't use it to analyze any of our client, protected confidential data because we don't know everything that happens once it takes that information and starts to use it. Right.
Right. Yeah.
We don't know, I mean, you can't specifically search it and find like a specific document that you may use for whatever, assignment that you're giving to AI. But we don't know all the rules of this yet. So in abundance of caution, we say, okay, we're not using it for these specific purposes yet until we better understand what those implications may be for, outside of like, of course they have a lot of privacy protections in place already. For example, anything that's within my system stays within my system and we turn off all of the basically consents for it to train itself by using, our data. Right. So, I mean, managing that is a big aspect of this. So, at this point, we're still using it in a very limited, directed way to avoid any sort of even perception of, compromising, privacy, data, et cetera.
Right. And I think it's important to understand to the extent that we can how it works. Like I mentioned, it's kind of a black box, and you mentioned opting out of letting it train based on your data. And that's sort of how these things work. So they were trained on an initial data set, which is, the entire internet, more or less. Yeah.
Right.
Everything available, which is, the entire culmination of human knowledge over the however many years we've existed on this earth. Yeah. Like it's just astounding the amount of information that it has access to. But then from there, it'll pick up on user trends, and anything you input to like ChatGPT or whatever will then by default go into their training model, and it'll use that to make it better. And there's not like a log. You can't have ChatGPT just like output a log of these are the calculations and these are the data points that I'm pulling from to display this answer. It doesn't really work like that. Like even the people at ChatGPT, my understanding, and again, I'm a layman, I don't know, whatever, but is that they could not even necessarily tell you exactly like how it works and what information is pulling from and everything. And so there is this big concern of where this information that you're putting into there is going. And like I keep going back to ChatGPT just because that's kind of it was at the forefront. It was the first big one that came out. And for my money, it seems to be still the most powerful, like for the purposes that I use it for, it seems to work the best. But like you can upload a PDF to ChatGPT and it'll analyze it, and then that still exists on their server in some capacity. And if you have not opted out of the training model, then that information that you give to them is being used to train the algorithm, to train the AI. And so it's not likely that then someone else can go ask it for the specific information about, John Doe's medical history or whatever. It's not going to pull that, but his information is going to be added to this, floating web of internet brain in some capacity. And we just don't really know all the ramifications of that.
Well, for example, a lot of the legal tools, what they have done is they limit that universe to just inside of its system. Like, so for example, with our Lexis research tool, it does not research the internet at large. It specifically is kind of, siloed just into Lexis's legal database, so it can't go out there. And this is actually a good opportunity to bring up the bad examples of using this. There was a lawyer, I'm not going to say what state or where he was, but basically what he did was he used AI to write a brief, and not using some of the tools that I'm talking about, just ChatGPT, whatever, just says, okay, write this legal brief for me. Here's my issue. Write me this entire, appellate brief, right? So he does that, and again, not having any of the guardrails on. And what AI did was it basically, to support his theory and his arguments, it made up a case. And I mean, and this is so intricate. I mean, it made up names. It made up a fact pattern. It made up a court. It made up a holding, which then it used to then support its position. And then he submits this, brief to a district court. And of course, the court is analyzing the brief, and it says, we're not aware of this authority.
What on earth are you talking about?
We don't know what this is. Please give us the citation, because to our knowledge, this case does not exist. And of course, the lawyer, not really probably realizing how inept he is at using AI at this point, queries AI again and says, is this a real case? And of course, AI doubles down on, yes, this is a real case. So he uses that to support his position. Of course, it's uncovered that this is a fake case, entirely made up by AI. Of course, highly unethical for you to then rely on these authorities that are not, legitimately real.
Right.
And of course, he was appropriately sanctioned for that. And now the whole legal industry has, learned a lesson from that, saying, okay, do not use AI to draft legal arguments, because it can, as many people, have heard this term, hallucinate and essentially make things up. Well, in some context, writing a story, okay, maybe you can, maybe there's some utility to that, right? Whereas, in the law, where we have to be, very, firmly rooted in law and in fact, you can't do that. Right. So that was just kind of a funny example.
Yeah. And it's just kind of a byproduct of how it's built, where it just wants to take the prompt that you give it and output what looks like a good answer.
Right.
And so since nothing existed, I'm assuming nothing existed that would specifically fit the criteria he was looking for to support his case. It just puts some stuff that it thinks would normally appear in a legal brief like that. It knows that there's going to be some kind of a citation with some case with names. Maybe it would have this fact pattern, and that would support what he wanted. So that's what the AI is doing, because that's what he told it to do. And so there it is.
Yeah.
Which, is kind of how I guess that plays into how AI has been most useful to me, which is as I guess a glorified or very helpful assistant that helps you accomplish things that you could do on your own much, much, much faster, but can't necessarily be relied on to do things that you couldn't do.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different applications there, but taking some tedious and sometimes menial tasks, feeding them to AI, and then you're just getting that response and that work product much quicker, but not using, for example, confidential information or having it draft, legal briefs for you and make up authorities and things like that.
Right. And like you mentioned, just being able to process huge amounts of data like it's doing for your legal research. And things that, you would be able to trawl through, it's just able to do it a whole lot quicker, but you also have the knowledge to be able to look at what it's giving you and make your own determination as to whether that's actually, relevant and useful. And just like I use it for diagnostic stuff I mentioned all the time. So we were having an issue with our phone server, and there was some configuration issue in it. I'm not sure what exactly was going on. I could spend hours researching and trying to figure it out, or I can just take a screenshot of our configuration page of the phone server, give it to ChatGPT and say, hey, does anything look weird here? And it's going to be able to get through that a lot quicker than I am.
Right. So another example in our practice is I use a case management software called Clio, and it will, it has, document templates, right? So you can basically build out a template to where you're spitting out, a cover letter or motion to continue or notice of representation or whatever. Well, it will actually pull the data out of your system, including, which court you're in, who the parties are, who the judge and what the case number is, who opposing counsel is. And it will build out that document to where you just hit generate the document. It merges all of those data points into this document. Now you have essentially a perfect draft of whatever it is that you need to file, right? Well, we have, I just discovered this last week. I'm all hot on this right now. But I started using Gemini to help me create those templates because there's a lot of, code that goes into that, right?
Yeah. Like I've made templates for Clio, just for an example for anyone watching what he's talking about. So like if you have the client and you want to pull in their name and address, you'll have to do like matter.client.first name,
right?
And then matter.client.last name, matter.client.state, so on and so forth. So it's just a lot of rote stuff that you have to pull in. And if you could use AI to just throw all that stuff into there for you, then that would save a lot of headache.
What was interesting is that I start asking Gemini about here's this template. Can you help me develop, other templates, for motions, for orders, for, different types of affidavits, verification, all these different things. Well, it knows Clio's source code.
Right.
I mean, I just start asking it. It already knows the, caret dot, client dot matter dot name. It knew all of that. So it's literally taking something that again is a very time-consuming task, and now I'm giving it, I want a document that does this, and kind of taking stuff that's a little bit out of my skill set. For example, some of the conditional logic, like if not this, then that, and actually that code is again beyond my really skill set to draft. I mean, I'm kind of just still scratching the surface on this, but this is allowing me to go much deeper into an area that I'm not really well equipped to do. So it's giving me another skill set that then I can, instead of it taking me a week to draft 5 of these documents, now I can do 5 in a day. And so it's really enhancing our ability to, again, provide quicker, better service to our clients, because the turnaround on us, drafting and producing some of these, sort of kind of form motion template documents that we routinely use, instead of taking us 30 minutes, it takes us 3. I mean, and it's just amazing how much time every single one of these different, applications that we're using AI for is saving us, which is in turn saving our clients.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's like I've used it for similar things. Like our case management system has a limitation where we have a specific folder structure for each matter that we have, and our case management system doesn't have the ability to create that folder structure. So I kind of use ChatGPT to help me write a Microsoft PowerShell script to monitor our main directory, and anytime a new matter is added, it'll go through and automatically create that folder structure, which is something that, like you said, I understand programming to an extent, like well enough to follow along and make corrections to something that exists. I just don't necessarily have the capacity to write it from scratch. And so it's a perfect use case for that. And again, that has saved us just so much little administrative overhead that then we can use on actually doing the meaningful work product and, deliver a better service.
Right.
And like you've talked about all these different uses that ultimately AI is, it's not coming in here and transforming your business on its own. It's really as powerful or as limited as your imagination and your capacity to come up with these different creative solutions to use it to apply. I mean, like you have all these different ideas for problems that it can solve and ways that it can make things go more efficiently. What I see a lot is, and honestly, a lot of the companies are pushing it as just a magic bullet. Like you take this in and it's going to solve all your problems, which
no, you have to know how to use it.
Right. Yeah.
It does not use itself. I mean, it's definitely something that has a lot of utility, but you got to know how to use it.
Exactly. Yeah. And like you were saying, it as precise as you can be with what you want from it. And I think that's kind of where a lot of the hang up comes from. That I see from people that maybe aren't as, eager to adopt it, is that you interface with AI a lot differently than like a different program. It's not something that you just deploy and then it's like you give a very rote step-by-step, okay, here's how you use this program, here's the button to click to accomplish the thing you want to accomplish. It's kind of you use it as an assistant. I mean, it's built to be a kind of human interface, like speak with it in a conversational tone. So you just ask it to do a thing in the way you would ask someone else to do a thing. And it's the same deal. Like if you ask someone to just go do something with no direction, maybe they'll do it. They're probably going to screw it up. But if you give them some step-by-step of all the specifics that you want to accomplish, it will do that. And it can be amazingly useful in doing so.
And AI does screw up. I mean, a lot. There are times when you give it a task and you get something back and you're like, no, that's not it. And then you give it the thumbs down button so it can learn that what the response is like not good. Try again.
Yes.
Right. Which kind of comes to another point here, which is that, anything that you do generate or use with AI, you have to thoroughly fact check and review what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right. Because if you don't, you kind of get in a situation like this lawyer, you're saying, oh, okay, yeah, it was able to, draft this brief for me. That's great. Unless it's wrong.
Yeah, it's not a replacement for knowledge, but it is an excellent addition. Like it's an excellent tool to use. It just it can't replace that fundamental knowledge of what you're doing and what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, if you're still not reviewing any work product that you are producing with AI and it meets your standards, then you are not using it right.
Right, yeah. And just personally at our office, we have been struggling to find a good way to integrate it to kind of ease some of the workload for several reasons. Like we talked about the ethical concerns with not wanting to upload just whole swaths of data into it, and how there are all these different versions. And like you talked about all these different specific programs that usually are siloed off from the main like internet. And our issue with that, and we've played around with a few of them, is that then it's kind of a double-edged sword, because then by not being able to continually be trained, they end up falling behind a little bit and aren't quite as sophisticated or on the cutting edge as some of these other ones. And so maybe they're not quite as useful. And also AI is, I'm going to say it's not really creative. I mean, it can give you a different way of looking at things, but just the nature of how it is trained on the average of what everyone else is doing means it's not really going to create new things or think about things in new ways. And for us, we do things probably in a non-traditional way. And I won't get into all specifics, but I would wager to say we do several things quite a bit differently than other firms that work in our practice area. And I mean, I think we get great results from that, but it also runs into the issue of, like, if we're asking AI to kind of help out with something, it's trying to do things in a more traditional way that bumps up against the way that we actually do things. And so trying to massage it into doing things the way that we would do things, we end up just putting more effort into trying to get the AI to do the thing than we would have to just do the thing ourselves.
You're getting the generic boilerplate response, right? It's not always meeting the standard that we have, in our office too, right? So sometimes you think there's going to be a good application, you start trying to use it, and you're like, well, actually, I'm doing this better than you are at this point, so you're not really helping me that much. And that's just kind of a function of the magic bullet aspect that I talked about, where AI it's at a point where it's established, it's a thing, it's here, everyone is using it. It's also not completely refined, and it's still a major moving target. Like going back to the ethical concerns again, again, non-lawyer, but like I've helped them evaluate what we have going on here. And all we've found so far, and you can correct me if you know of anything else, there was an opinion, I think, from last year talking about the ethical use of AI with lawyers. And it basically just boiled down to, look, you just got to make sure you're following your ethical obligations to your clients. We can't tell you specifically whether to use or not to use these programs, but it is on you to make sure you're adhering to all your guidelines. But then even since then, just in this past year, so many different variations of programs have come out, and even these bigger, more broad, less secure ones have made big strides and big systematic changes to how they manage data to make it more secure and give you more control. And so it's a big question of where this is all going to end up, let alone like where it even is right now. Well, yeah. And that's obviously, very specific to the legal industry, and which we've been talking mostly about because that's what we know.
Right.
But for example, there's
It is
basically things like, okay, if you're going to generate, work product with AI, you need to disclose that in the document.
Right.
Or for example, and I think this was out of Canada. I haven't actually fact checked this, but I was talking to somebody and they mentioned basically an opinion. I think it was out of Canada that said, they were basically arguing over attorney's fees on these motions. And then the court was like, well, did you, use AI to help you cut down on your time in this? And they basically said, we're not giving you as much attorney's fees because you didn't, use this tool that helps you be more efficient with your practice. And I started thinking about that. I'm like, that really may become the trend, that if, you're not ahead of this, then you're falling behind. And that, you basically are going to have to learn how to use this stuff at one point, because otherwise you're just not going to be able to compete anymore.
Right.
And especially in, PI work is obviously, mostly contingent fee, structure on fees. Yeah. So really saving, your time earns you more money. Whereas in other, billable hour type of fee structure, like family law and business work and others, that's where you can really start to produce very tangible savings to your clients, because now I can do something that may generally, cost you, 10 grand, and we can do it for a fraction of that because we are just much faster at doing it.
Right. And like you mentioned, we've been talking about the legal industry, but obviously this is far, far reaching, well beyond that. And personally, I've used it to review my medical records, like my personal ones. And I'm not recommending that people do that. Whatever, people have their own concerns about the privacy of that. I don't care. Like what ChatGPT is going to know that I have high cholesterol and anxiety. Like Google knows way more about me than that already. But its ability to parse this like big complex data set and tell me, what all these different results mean and everything is amazing. And like, that would be incredibly useful for the healthcare industry if they can figure out the, privacy concerns of that, which, is a huge thing. But
yeah, I've heard some stories, again, I've fact checked some of the stuff, but that, it is just, the use of AI and medical diagnosis has just been very, very effective.
Oh, it would be transformative.
More, precise than doctors are able to be. And again, that's kind of, same in the legal field. We're able to do things, better and faster by using these sort of tools. And I would have to imagine that is also applicable for other professional fields, doctors, engineers, whomever,
Yeah, I was listening to a podcast yesterday. Sam Harris, he had a guest on. I don't remember the guy's name, but he's from, I think it's called the Colossus Project there. What is it? They are unextinctioning. They're reintroducing extinct species. So they've been working on synthesizing the DNA of like the woolly mammoth and the dodo and these species that have gone extinct. And
we need them back.
We really do. Like I wake up every morning like, man, I wish I had a pet mammoth. But soon I'll be able to. They estimate by 2028, they think they'll be able to reintroduce the first one into the wild. But he was talking about their usage of AI and that and like splicing these different DNA strands and being able to tell them what specific tools they should start using on these things that just take like a very, long time. Like it can take like, I think they were saying like 6 months for this one test to even know whether they were using the right tool set to try and begin doing this. And by using AI to evaluate all the data on that, they've been able to cut that time down to, use the right one just to start out with. And that's kind of, some higher concept stuff. Like I don't think splicing DNA of the woolly mammoth is going to be applicable to anyone running a small business in the Mid-Ohio Valley that I know of. Maybe we have some stuff like that going on.
I don't know. My 3-year-old would be very interested to see if we can bring some dinosaurs back.
Exactly.
So get some Jurassic Park going on in here.
Right. It really is. But like even for just anything, like I run a small media company, and just being able to like analyze the different trends, and I use a lot of AI assisted tools in my editing and everything that just saves so much time. And there are just so many different applications. Like I said, it's really limited by your imagination as long as you have enough I guess, self-awareness to know your limitations and understand the limitations of AI, and like don't kind of reach beyond your means and rely on it to write a brief that you don't understand and cite some cases that don't exist.
Right. Yeah, that's a big no.
Yeah, definitely is. And you know, a lot of people, small businesses, are using it for different kind of search engine optimization and blah blah blah, all those things that I have maybe some slight concerns with, because I don't think it's really doing a good thing for the internet as a whole. But you know, it is what it is. But yeah, I'm just kind of curious. Do you have any thoughts on maybe where you see it going based on the trends that you've seen? Like, where do you think this AI ends up fitting in, you know, to, I guess, specifically the legal field, kind of the world at large?
Yeah, I mean, the legal research and drafting applications, I think, are just going to become more and more and more sophisticated to the point where you are able to say, okay, draft me, you know, an appellate brief, or write me a motion for summary judgment. Or, and actually we did use it for this, you know, purpose, where we would basically just scan in, you know, a pleading that we get from the other side. Let's say I'm responding to a motion for summary judgment, right? And I upload that document. I say, analyze these authorities for me, and it will start to, you know, look at counter arguments and things of that nature, and even start to pull cases and say, you know, again, within, you know, the parameters of your, you know, legal research database, you know, it's already doing those things. And I think those things will become more reliable. Right. So I think that's a big piece of it. You know, once we really understand all the, you know, privacy concerns with how, you know, AI crunches this information and uses it to train itself, et cetera, I think there will likely be applications where you can start to use it to analyze even, you know, protected information, because we have the security to know this is not going to be shared or discoverable or knowable in any way with the way that we're using this. So I think the privacy, you know, parameters of this are going to become better to where we can use it in those areas. And then, you know, I mean, those are the big things for lawyers, right? Are those are the two kind of, you know, legal research and drafting, and then analyzing big data sets. I mean, those are where we could really, you know, enhance, you know, again, client service. You know, we're able to do these things better, more accurately, and quicker. But, you know, I don't know. I mean, I think, you know, for example, you know, is AI going to start to replace lawyers? You know, or are we going to have, you know, now adjudicatory bodies who are, or just a ChatGPT robot who is saying like, okay, I hear your argument. Is it going to start making decisions for us? Right. Kind of a wild thing to think about.
Right. It's possible. I don't think so. I mean, I
would hope not.
Yeah. I think that the legal field specifically, like, AI has so many applications in terms of reviewing all of these things, but it's also so much of your job is arguing interpretation of the law. I mean, that's what it is. And it's the interpretation of these words that are written and how they apply to this specific situation. And yes, an AI can review that and offer some kind of guidance or analysis of that, but it ultimately comes down to a human interpretation of what this means and how it applies. And I don't.
Then you get into, you know, again, when is the government going to step in and regulate what the uses of AI can be?
Right. Yeah. And that's a whole another thing, because it's such an emerging field that we're kind of at the Wild West stage of it, where it's already pulled back a little, but like even so, you can get an unregulated model. Like you can even run one locally. Like you can download an LLM and just run it on your computer with no restrictions whatsoever, and it'll do anything you want. But yeah, we're really at the point where these companies are just reaching out in all kinds of different directions and getting a feel for what this thing's even capable of before they decide, you know, what we should be using it for. And everyone's looking at it. I mean, there's all kinds of, like, even a couple years ago, so many of those very prominent, notable figures put together some kind of plea. They signed a petition saying, hey, let's just kind of step back and chill and evaluate this for a little bit before we keep pushing on.
Right.
But yeah.
Probably a smart thing to do.
Yeah. It's just, it's not going to happen. I mean, it's out of the gate. People are going to keep pushing forward with it. So we just got to get a handle on, where it's going to go, where it's going to land.
Well, yeah, and I think, in different fields, like, again, the legal industry, different professional boards, I mean, they are going to start to come out with opinions that say, you can use it for this, you can't use it for that, or at least not until, we get some additional safeguards, protections, basically certainty that what we're doing is right and that it works and that it's, not getting you into trouble in terms of compromising, data or citing authorities that don't exist or, things like that.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see where it all kind of lands. I suppose that's probably, we've been going for about an hour, so that's probably
oh yeah, I got to go to work.
Yeah, I suppose I probably should too. I don't have any missed calls yet, so I can keep going until.
No, just Jim, only one call. Text. It must have not been that important. So.
Yeah, so we're good. So any kind of final wrap up thoughts?
Not just, cool to be on the what is this a Vienna vibe?
We're still the Vienna vibe right now. Okay. Our name was pending. It was possibly going to be the Jim and Drew show, but as of right now, it's the Drew and Morgan show.
Okay, so today's the Drew and Morgan show.
Yeah, today's the Drew and Morgan show. Good. It's flexible. It's fluid. So
well, I think this was a great first run at that show. So look forward to the opportunity to come and do it again sometime soon.
Absolutely. So I appreciate your time. I appreciate everyone for watching, listening. If you enjoy this, like, subscribe, share this on social media, do whatever things you do. But anyway, this has been the Vienna Vibe. Morgan, thanks for coming. Appreciate your time.
Thanks. Peace.
Yep, thank you guys.